Lake Michigan lives and breathes. Beastly, ferocious, raging, wild. Calm, quiet, tranquil, still. She decides her own mood. Lake Michigan Point to Point presents this great lake at its most powerful and at its most beautiful. From her screaming sunsets to her roaring gales, from her meandering shores to her undulating waves, from harbors, lakes, and rivers that supply her lifeblood water, Lake Michigan lays bare her heart and soul through the images made of her by a father and son whose lives have been tied to her like a double Beckett bend.
The beauty of this area, Ludington, Michigan, and the lakeshore, from Big Point Sauble to Little Point Sauble, has always inspired me with its unique intensity of moods through the 4 seasons.
Photography has always been a part of my life. I watched and learned a lot from my dad, who was a photojournalist for the local newspaper and served in the Coast Guard for many years. Seeing his passion for life through his photos and stories helped me determine what I was called to do, which is photography.
Our family has always been a tremendous source of encouragement and inspiration. My wife Debbie has always been my biggest supporter, my biggest fan. For 17 years she helped me build this business, and she continues to be my #1 supporter. And my boys, Todd, who's an officer in the Armed Forces, Willie, who's in corporate management, and Brad, who's now my partner in this photo business. They were like my Sherpas, lugging around all my gear, tripods, lenses, and bags.
I remember going along and being so excited about the idea of chasing light and trying to catch nature's hidden moments. As a kid, being with my brothers and my cousin and going on those shoots with my dad, those were amazing times.
You see, photography to us is a family endeavor. It makes me so proud to see what we as a family have created over all these years.
Now that I am married and have my own family, it's like I can see the joy of sharing this wonderful gift of being aware of the awesome beauty of nature and passing that along to my children.
Today I am proud to be one half of a partnership with my son Brad. Together we are
Todd
and Brad
Reed
Reed Photography.
Photography.
Sunday afternoons were a big family time for us, and we took a lot of rides Sunday afternoons and Sunday evenings in the family car, and I became a very visual person in that regard, and a lot of those rides were along the lakeshore through the countryside. My folks were very much into the outdoors. That evolved into a love for just the area. So Ludington is part of my blood, is in my heart, and that's what keeps me here. It is one of the most beautiful places in the world. Very passionate about it, because when we talk about Ludington, we're talking about from Big Point Sauble at Ludington State Park to Little Point Sauble at Silver Lake. That to us is home, and we know home very well.
I had gone to college to be a teacher. I got a degree in elementary education from Calvin College and enjoyed it, but all along I kept having this huge passion for photography, and I knew from the confidence that my dad had given me critiquing my work that my work would stand up with his and that we could do really well together. And so I took a leap of faith and followed my heart and went with the photography and built a successful business, and we've put out our second book, and it's been well received, and we've got a lot of projects in the works, and we're always thinking of new ideas. I appreciate from my dad the confidence he gave me to be able to do what I do, and it's gone really well.
Well, when Brad talks about the confidence that I showed in him, I'd also like to point out that he showed confidence in me. Brad was adamant that we could make a good living in this business for both of us, and with the support of his wife Betsy and the support of my wife Debbie, they kind of hung it all out there and said, okay, for a couple of years, we'll be the dependable breadwinners, and you guys go after your dream.
one thing my dad taught me over the years with the photography is that you need to pre-visualize your shot, and when that light is in a certain direction or at a certain angle, it's going to be great. And so we're doing that all the time, and a lot of times I'm running like a madman because I've already pre-visualized that shot, but I have to get in there before the light leaves, and that intensity and that drive to get to that image becomes my driving force and my passion. And there's a great photographer, he's one of my favorites, the great late Galen Rowell. He was a mountain climber turned professional photographer, and he says that great photography is like an action sport, and that you need to be mobile, and you need to be in the moment and chasing the light. That's really almost a hook. It's almost like a drug, and that's what I'm going after when I go to shoot pictures on the beach or out in the country scenes that I'm shooting. It doesn't matter where I'm shooting, but when I get that camera in my hand, I get just a shot of adrenaline, and I'm ready to look for that peak moment.
I have a saying, little things are big things, and in your photographs, little things are huge, and that doesn't matter whether it's where something's positioned or what direction it's moving. It could have to do with the light. It could have to do with where those seagulls are at that moment. Everything changes everything. Little things are big things. And so when I am photographing, I am totally absorbed. Perseverance is a big thing with us. Very often we spend 5-6 visits to get it right. You know, we have a picture pre-visualized, like Ansel Adams talked about, and that means when we say pre-visualized, we're meaning we're seeing the completed picture before we ever sometimes get to the scene. That picture is in our diary. We're just waiting for the right weather, the right light, the right deer to come along, whatever it might be. And when all of those things come together, it's just like almost an otherworld experience, you know. And when the light when we get what we call magic light or God's light, it's light that it can't be faked, it can't be photoshopped. It's something that's so surreal, so magical that no one can duplicate it. That's just to die for. Our first book, Ludington Point, was a great success. When we sold out of that book, we were trying to decide what do we do next. And at that point, we came up with the idea for a new book featuring half of Brad's work and half of my work, focusing on the same area, the point-to-point region between Big Point Sauble and Little Point Sauble on Lake Michigan.
And we wanted to stick with the point-to-point theme because it worked really well. At this time in our life, we didn't have a ton of time to travel to other parts of the state or other parts of the country, and we live in one of the most beautiful places in the country or in the world even, and so we thought we'll just do the point-to-point again, but...
Yeah. And some of the greatest photographers in the country, including Clyde Butcher, who's considered to be the Ansel Adams of the Everglades, and some other photographers would say to you and say to us that where do you go to shoot great pictures? And Clyde Butcher would say, no one knows your backyard like you do. We know our backyard pretty well. It's our front yard, it's our backyard. We've lived here all our lives, and we know it intimately. We love it, we're passionate about it. And so there was no place like doing home again and doing it differently and doing it with Brad's photographs. Half the photographs would be and are his. And that adds a different dimension and a lot of excitement to a new book.
In September of 2003, when we sold out of the first book, Ludington Point, we were eager to start something new. So we decided at that point we would dedicate the whole year of 2004 to shooting new photographs for the book. And we shot a lot. The winter of 2003, 2004, especially around February of 2004, was phenomenal. Tons of ice, and it was a beautiful spring. It was a very wet spring, which led to great flowers and different dune grasses, and the summer was phenomenal, and it led into a spectacular fall. So that whole year we were just blessed with great light and great color and a lot of moments to capture on film.
We have had several customers come in our gallery this year and sit down on the nice benches we have to sit there and watch and actually start crying looking at our book. And so I think that really says how powerful the images can be, the effect that they can have on people. A lot of times with art, with books, it's a matter of slowing down or getting people to slow down, catching their attention. The whiskey shots or the big wave, the big storm picture, that's a hammer, that maybe gets their attention. But then we throw in the wine shots, the lighthouse in the fog, the dune grass in a nice soft light, and that is something they can savor. And when you put that whole package together, and with the seasons of the beauty of the Great Lakes here, I think that people have been really moved by our book, as we are when we shoot those individual images. But when you put them together collectively, they're a pretty powerful message to people.
We wanted the new book to be a great experience, but we also wanted them to get the reading in, and so we decided to put the captions right with each picture and do a little picture and a big picture together, each with captions, and the whole set became a very powerful experience. And that was probably the thing we got the best reviews on. And my wife Betsy is a professional editor, and she definitely made the book and the captions better, and the whole experience really kind of took hold and took the viewer of the book on a journey from point to point. The first book, I guess, would sum up was more of a visual journey, and this book is a visual and a kind of a intellectual academic journey as well.
My most memorable black and white photograph in my newspaper career of 23 years was the day the Edmund Fitzgerald freighter sank. And I'd never experienced anything like, as a human being in that environment, much like a hurricane. And that was very intense. But when it comes to my fine arts photography, the one image that really stands out is called God's Light, which is an image of lightning striking the Ludington North Breakwater Lighthouse. And I took that picture in September of 1997. I shot 46 shots as this storm rolled in on us, and that storm's rolling at about 35, 40 knots. And two of my last three images had bolts that made me just physically jump. And I knew that if I had done my work correctly, that I had recorded a good image, although it happened so fast you don't really get to see exactly what you got. And a week later, when I got my slides back, there were two images with terrific bolts, and one of which was God's Light, and is by far the most intense experience I've ever had in photography, and the best results. As I said, I'd taken the God's Light image in 1997, and to that point, I had never entered one of my photographs in a nature photography, outdoor photography contest. I had won many awards over the years in newspaper photojournalism photography from the Associated Press and some other organizations, but had never tried that. But my wife, Debbie, just grabbed that image and said, hey, you got to do this. And she saw this information on Nikon International Contest. We sent it in, and it ended up being third prize in the world in the main category. There were 26,000 plus entries, and that image was selected as one of the top images of that competition in 1998. And for that, I'm grateful to Debbie. the image, I think, spoke for itself.
My most memorable moment in my career of photography was when I got the power and light shot, which is the one behind me, and it was October, which is our favorite month to shoot, and it was stormy. A storm was rolling across Lake Michigan, and it was getting towards dusk, so we thought we better head out there and see what we could find. And my dad and my wife Betsy and I were walking out the south breakwall. We got past the elbow and we're heading towards the pier, and on the way out there I turned around to talk to Betsy, and while I was talking to her, her whole face turned bright orange, and I thought, oh yes, here we go, here's the magic light. And when I turned back to turn towards the north pier, the rock caught my eye, and this light, this magic light, was hitting one side of the rock, and it was just glowing. And you got to understand, this rock is only about 2 feet out of the water. It's right down at the base of the breakwall. And so I had just a split second to run down on the edge of the breakwater and set my tripod up, get the camera set up, focus, and shoot. And I got 2 shots off before the wave hit the rock, and then the water hit me, and I got drenched. And it was cold, and it was windy and stormy. And I showed it to my dad, and my dad immediately knew I had a winner, and it was his favorite picture that at that point of mine he'd ever seen. And it was just a great moment. It was a picture I had never really pre-visualized. I just got caught up in the moment, and I was chasing the light, and I saw it, and I got there, got the shot, and got out of there, and luckily didn't get swept off the breakwall. The end of the summer, I got a phone call. I was at work at the gallery on a Saturday, and Betsy called, and she said, UPS is here, and they have a special delivery for you. You have to come and sign for this package. And I thought, well, what is it? And she said, well, there's a Nikon label on the outside. And I thought, this is kind of cool. So I drove home and signed for the package and opened it up, and the first letter I pulled out, it said, congratulations, Mr. Reed, you've been selected as one of the winners in the Nikon International Photo Contest. And I was pretty geeked. And the picture won runner-up in the emerging talent category, and there were 33,000 images from several countries, and there were only 51 winners, and that was one of the winners in the emerging artist category. Teeth of the storm. As I lay on my stomach at the end of the inner north breakwater, an icy cold wave crashed over my head. I braced myself for the cold shock and pressed the shutter button at the same time. It all happened so fast that I was not sure if I captured the moment. I continued to lie in the snow and shoot, but another wave never came. Fortunately, my first shot turned out.
White squall. I've witnessed much larger waves, but none more poetically perfect than this that surrounded the Ludington Lighthouse during a February storm. My son Willie and I had withstood a blinding snowstorm for hours before we were finally rewarded late in the day with a lull, and sunlight broke below the cloud ceiling to backlight the lighthouse and waves for a few precious minutes.
Little Sabo Christmas Eve. On the morning of Christmas Eve, 1999, I was eager to try out the new camera that my dad had bought me for Christmas. He and I drove to one of our favorite places in the world, Little Point Sabo Lighthouse. On the way, it began to snow unbelievably large, soft flakes. As soon as we arrived, I stepped out of the truck, set my camera on the tripod, and took this photograph before the snow stopped falling.
Red Tug. The tugboat John Henry circles the Badger to help the 410-foot car ferry battle its way out of Ludington Harbor against wind-driven ice packed tight from surface to lake bottom. This scene and the ice blue railing scene are my favorite winter pictures of all time. I knew, as National Geographic photographer Sam Abel might say, that I was, quote, in the presence of a picture, unquote.
Sunburst. As I hustled to find a vantage point to capture this image, I was struck with an overwhelming sense of calmness. I realized that I was one of only a handful of people at that moment lucky enough to witness the perfect blending of a human creation and God's creation. This was a defining moment in my life when I knew I had found my calling as a photographer. And with this image, I took 21 shots, and this is the only one out of the 21 where the beacon was glowing yellow. And every shot I took, I had to keep moving to keep that shaft of light or particle ray behind the lighthouse right in line with the lighthouse.
Gale force. Wind contorts my face. Waves roar and crash just short of my tripod. Sun gleams and dances across the water. Clouds paint the sky. I am in my glory. This is as good as it gets for a Lake Michigan photographer. These are the days I dream about and rarely experience. This is one of the best moments of my life. My camera records it so I and others can experience it again and again.
Holy water. Each night that I step onto the shores of Lake Michigan, I am amazed by the unique light show that unveils itself. No two sunsets are the same. Just when you think you have seen them all, Mother Nature renders a refreshingly new display of her beauty.
Windswept. The first 2 weeks of October are a glorious time of year along the Lake Michigan shoreline. I tell my photography students more often than they want to hear, clouds are your friends. Early October is a great time to experience sunshine, fresh breeze, and crisp, clear air painted with billowy clouds. When these conditions coexist, the dune grasses and beaches appear most alive.
Grand Sentinel. One of the best parts of my job is that I am always meeting new people. My wife Betsy, my dad, and I trekked to the Big Point Sabo Lighthouse on a long summer evening. Upon arrival, we were greeted by volunteer lighthouse keepers working outside on the grounds. They generously offered to turn on all of the interior and exterior lights. My dad climbed on a dune to shoot from the south, while Betsy and I walked down the beach a few hundred yards to shoot from the north. To our surprise, we found a perfect reflection of the lighthouse in a storm pool. This shot would have not been possible without the help of the lighthouse keepers, and for that I am very grateful.
The good life. What is there about watching a seagull soar into the sunset that makes us want to trade places, if only for a short flight? I had that feeling one warm, sunny evening while watching this gull fly over Lake Michigan. But I have witnessed the opposite extreme, seagulls hunkering down on ice formations against the wind, snow, and cold on sub-zero mornings. Life as a seagull probably is seldom romantic. Often it is a fight for survival.
Great blue. I've learned hundreds of photography hints from my dad, but one of the most important things he has taught me is that the sky often displays the best color about 20 minutes after sunset. I had just captured the breezy night photograph when Betsy and I drove further into Ludington State Park to look for more photographs. As we passed over the Sable River Bridge, Betsy noticed a heron in the water below. I grabbed my gear and I was off. To get the best photograph possible, I knew I would have to get in the river. I waded ever so slowly to within 15 yards of the bird and quietly captured the photograph I was looking for. Thanks for the helpful hints, Dad.
Storm light. Renowned National Geographic photographer Sam Abel talks about learning to wait longer when he knows there is a picture to be made, but all of the ingredients are not yet present. This October morning was the 5th consecutive morning I had driven 30 miles to Little Point Sabo Lighthouse to shoot a scene I had composed on the first day. The light was sharp, the westerly wind was building up some great waves into repetitive patterns, and the clouds looked powerful and stunning. I knew the final ingredient would be for one of the beams of light traveling between breaks in the moving clouds to fall upon the lighthouse. After 100 cold minutes, a bright beam appeared headed my way. As it hit the lighthouse, I began shooting. A few seconds later, the light also hit the dune in front of my camera and tripod. For about 5 seconds, one of the most glorious shoreline scenes I've ever witnessed lay before me. Then the magic light moved on, and the scene became so much less moving.